Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian and I'm here to build up our round 20. Is it 20? Is it 21? Who knows where we're at this stage? I've lost the plot after that Collingwood win. I don't know what week it is, but I know that we're playing the Saints this week. 4 games to go, 2 wins needed to make finals. Every game from here matters. And to discuss it all, I am joined by a man who potentially has more disdain for the St Kilda Football Club than I do, which I'm not sure if that's possible. You may know him from causing absolute mayhem and chaos on Twitter, particularly during the trade period. I'm still hearing rumors Baz Lenker may still find his way to the Blues in the off-season. And he also features regularly on the Besties podcast with the great Tori and Jasmina in the form of controversial Cam. And it is, of course, you know who it is, Mr. Cam Dempster, mate. Cammy, thanks for joining me. How are you this lovely Thursday night?
Oh, Ian, great to be here, mate. Thanks for having me. I'm pretty good. I was pretty keen building up, and then obviously the news that's filtered through on Twitter about an hour ago has rocked the boat slightly. I'm sort of going into doomsday a little bit, but I'm trying to pick myself back up a bit, I think. But other than that, I'm going well.
Yeah, no, good to hear. And yeah, it's the news of Mitch McGovern's hamstring injury. I think they've said it's 2 to 3 weeks at this stage. Doesn't look good. Another one you can add to the injury list right now. And it's really dulled the vibe. It feels like we should have just recorded beforehand. Would have been beautiful. Wouldn't have had to worry about it. Go in with all the confidence. And it definitely has tried to derail things. But let's try and boost the positivity, at least on the Carlton end, as we get through this episode. But we'll go the opposite of positivity, because you and I have been back and forth on the socials and in each other's DMs, occasionally talking about how we don't like the St Kilda Football Club. So I kind of want to get to know, has anything happened along this journey that has made you not like this football club? Are there any moments, anything that has drawn this hatred together?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like they've just been a team that's always beaten us. And I know that's not saying much because we've lost to a lot of teams over the last decade, but I feel like even when we were pretty good, sort of in the, 2008 to 2012 period, they'd still just always find a way to beat us. And I think the hatred started, I was pretty young. I was at the footy with my dad, and I just remember this Saints fan sitting in front of us. She was so feral, spilling beer everywhere. I'm just like, no, I hate the St Kilda Football Club. And ever since then, it's just been deep rooted. Like, people say they hate Collingwood, they hate Essendon, but for me, like, Saints are nearly number one. Just not a fan.
Gee, that's big. That is massive. No, and it's funny. Like, you've been pigeonholed as, you've got the new nickname, the controversial Cam, and we caused a bit of controversy on this podcast in our last build-up show where Saints TV and all the St Kilda fans were flocking to the YouTube comments, obviously listening to the build-up show. Not sure why, but thanks for the view. Thanks for the engagement. They might be here again, and they were not happy that we were giving it straight to them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this episode, because, yeah, I don't know where mine stems from. I know that my best mate growing up in, like, kinder and primary school was a Saints fan, but I was trying to think about it today. I don't feel like that's where it stemmed from, because I could not tell you anything that transpired when I was in kinder or primary school. But it's similar. I think it's because they always beat us. And now you fast forward to now, you got guys like Tim Membry that are fine footballers, but every time they seem to play us, he's Wayne Carey, he's prime Chris Judd against us and dominating. And it just feels like that's what happens. For whatever the reason, we just can't beat St Kilda when it matters, but I feel like that will definitely be changing this week. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about, what do we want to see from this game? It is a podcast favorite segment. We know we want to win, but what are the couple of things from this contest that you're wanting to see?
Well, I think, firstly, I just want to see the same focus that I think the boys have gone in for the last month. St Kilda are probably obviously lesser than Collingwood and Port Adelaide. But I think we even saw against West Coast, the focus the boys brought from the start was really elite. And even though West Coast are clearly the worst team in the comp. So I want to see that. I just want to see relentless pressure from the start. And I don't want to see us go away from anything that's brought us success in the last month. We do have some key outs, but I think our success over the last month is built off system, and I don't want to see us go away from that. So I think I just want to see more of the same. That's honestly exactly what I'm looking for.
No, it's a really good point, because I think you've nailed it in talking about just that pressure and work rate. It just feels like everything is stemmed from that and led us to that success. And even last week when we have those injuries in the game with Chera going down, and we obviously had so many outs against Collingwood, that was what got us that victory. And it feels this next man up mentality. We spoke about it heaps last year, and it's weird. The conversation last year I felt was next man up, but hope that individual could fill the shoes. Whereas now it's just kind of like, it almost doesn't matter the name. It's not just a body that fits into this system. Is that kind of how you've seen the change, at least for this last sort of 6 weeks or so, talking about this next man up and our structure?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, you've just got to look at our forward line. Like, those names that have come in, they're not your star sort of names, but they've come in and they've just played a role. Like, clearly you want your best players out there. Like, we'd love to have Cherry out there. We'd love to have McGovern out there. But I definitely do think that there's been a more selfless shift in their mindset. So, that they're doing the team things because, that can be replicated by people coming in. Like, you can't get someone to come to centre half forward and be as good as Harry, but you can come in, get someone to play that centre half forward role. So, yeah, I think that's definitely been one of the biggest things that's changed over the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I had here as my what do you want to see? It was just keep the pressure up, no matter how many injuries, no matter how many outs. And I want us as well, because we spoke about this a little bit on the Collingwood review show, talking about the tackles. And the last 6 games, we've won the tackle count in 5 of those 6 wins, which is ridiculous with how much footy we were getting and dominating these teams at an average of 74.8 tackles per game. And so I feel like that's just a ridiculous tally. So I want to win the tackle count again, because if you do that, I think regardless of the players that we actually have out there, it just gives us the platform to win. And even saying that, I think we still have the quality to get the job done anyway. We've just beaten a team like Collingwood, informed team, best team all season, on top of the ladder for a reason. We beat them with the outs that we have. Not to be too disrespectful to St Kilda, I think they're still in the top 8 for a reason. They have played some good footy, particularly early on, but Collingwood were better than St Kilda. So I think even with our outs, we've still got enough quality out there to get the job done.
Oh, 100%. Like, it's realistically, Cherry didn't play the second half. He's obviously not going to be playing. And it's pretty much just McGovern out of, that side. So, like you said, there's definitely still well and truly enough quality out there.
Yeah. Did you have any other little nuggets that you were looking for? Anything else that you wanted to see from this game?
I want to see your best on ground from Sardi. I know that's pretty specific, but I really just want to see him, do what Jack Sinclair seems to do to us. I want to just see him cause havoc off the half back line. I said in the Besties podcast, I'm looking for a goal from outside 50. So, look, that would make me pretty happy if I can see that.
It's funny. I feel like you've substituted in for Lockie perfectly here, because I haven't really given you the run sheet, but everything you're saying is perfectly what I'm looking at in front of me, because I almost wrote down, I want an outside 50 goal from Sard. And I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was subconsciously from what you said this week that just stayed in there all the time. It didn't make the list, but similarly talking about Sard, I was putting my attention towards the St Kilda Football Club and looking at Jack Sinclair, and my what do you want to see from this game is for Sinclair to just have no impact on this game, because the last 2 times we've played them, he's absolutely killed us. The game last year, he just tore us up off the halfback, and it was incredibly influential to get that St Kilda win. And then earlier this season, they threw him into the midfield and all of a sudden just took the game away from us. And so I think from that, I'm just wanting our forwards to continue to apply the pressure that they have over these last 6 weeks, negate his rebounding influence. And then if he does go into the midfield, the boys just need to shut him down, because I don't want us to get beaten by what we know. And what we know is Sinclair's a good footballer. He's done it to us last couple of times. So let's try and quell his influence. I don't want to be walking away from this game going, we've lost, and Jack Sinclair has absolutely torched us yet again.
We don't want to see that. I mean, like, and this is the perfect opportunity for a guy like Fogarty, I reckon. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he is someone that I think could play like a nice little shutdown role on Jack Sinclair, because he's got the attributes. He's a good tackler. He's in pretty good form. 50th game this week too, which is a good effort for him to get to that point. So, yeah, that'd be cool to see him maybe match up on Sinclair.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at our forward line and the pressure that they have been able to bring, it feels like that's built so much. And previously, we're almost looking at like, is it a Cottrell? Is it an Ed Kerno? Who's playing this lockdown role? And we haven't really been confident. Whereas you bring up a name like Fogarty, and weirdly, even though he hasn't been a mainstay in this team for very long at all, I'm going, yeah, let's have him play that negating role. And with the rest of them, with Cunningham, with Martin, with Motlop, collectively, it feels like they're going to be able to do a job, because I've been trying to find a lot of stats today to just rattle something out on this match build-up. And I found this one. And if you're looking at our pressure, this is the difference over this season from our horrendous patch from rounds 1 to 13 to 14 to 20. And you look at the winning the tackle differential in those games. From round 1 to 13, we were ranked 16th. From rounds 14 to 20, we now rank 4th in the tackle differential, which is already a ridiculous shift. And then just forward half pressure. Rounds 1 to 13, we ranked 14th. Rounds 14 to 20, it's first. And that also without a Harry Mackay. It's just, those are the things that are building blocks. Does that give you a bit more confidence that we'll definitely be able to handle a Sinclair or the other rebounders that they have throughout their squad?
Yeah, 100%, because you don't get those numbers just off one or two guys' effort. So it's obviously a collective mindset. So I'm a bit, worried about the ads we've got, but I am definitely very confident that we can cover it, because, yeah, like I've said, it's a whole team shift the way they're playing at the moment. So we should be able to handle the Saints, I think, pretty comfortably if we play the way we've played for the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's hard not to have that mentality, because we've played ridiculous football. We've beaten the top 2 teams, and it hasn't just been getting over the line in the last second. Every single one of these wins has been comprehensive, and it's now just bringing this belief, which is exciting. I'm not sure I've had this much belief and confidence that if we're able to bring what we have, we're literally going to beat anyone. Did you have any other, what did you want to see, or were those your kind of main points for this week?
I think if I can see that, I'll be pretty happy that we've done enough to win. So I don't think it's going to be the prettiest game. So I just want to see relentless pressure. Let's just if it's a scrap, then we'll make it hard. But, let's just bring that heat from the start.
Yeah, no, absolutely love it. I didn't have one until about 20 minutes before we started recording, and now I had to jot this one down. Just no more injuries. Seriously, please, fingers crossed. I can't deal with it anymore. We've been decimated over the last month or so when we finally turn it around and play some good football. So, yes, praying for no injuries. But let's talk a bit about this contest. Let's talk about the Saints, because I know you love doing it. How have you seen St Kilda this year? How confident are you that we will get this win? And what are you kind of looking out from a St Kilda point of view? What are the things we need to watch out for from them?
I was thinking about this earlier. I feel like they're such a hard team to kind of analyze how they hurt you. I know they're extremely defensive, but I just don't really rate them that highly. And this might come back to bite me, but I don't think there's room in the modern game to be playing so negative like they do. So, clearly the way they can beat us is if they shut us down and don't let us score. It was interesting to see them last week open the game up against Hawthorn in the second quarter, but I don't know whether that's much of an achievement, just the way the Hawks are going at the moment. So, I don't know. I think you don't want to let guys like Sinclair off halfback have a really good game. You don't want Bradley Hill getting too much of the ball because he's a ball user, and I've just got nightmares of him strolling up and down Marvel Stadium last year and even earlier in the year. I do not want to see that again. And I don't want to see Tim Membry turn into Wayne Carey for 4 quarters. That's another thing I do not want to see.
Every time. Like, How about you? Sorry to cut you off, but
No.
how ridiculous! Bloke has not played like any games this season. He's been out injured the whole time. I swear he's played 2 games this year, and they've both been against us. Like, what is going on? How come they're getting all these players back perfectly in time to play the Blues?
You could say it's bad luck, or you could say that they're pretty nervous because they're coming up against the Blue Baggers. But no, it's honestly it's crazy. Like, Membry just seems to always have a really good game against us. I remember the game late last year, and he was just they just killed us, and he was a big part of it. So I think, they do have a lot of good running power. Obviously, I think I don't know recently, but early on that was sort of why they were going pretty well. But I don't, is King going to be underdone? Like, I don't know how good he's going to be. Is Membry going to be underdone? Like, I saw he only had 8 disposals or 9 disposals and a goal in the VFL last week. Like, it's not really jumping off the page. Yes, they're decent names, but I'm not really scared of them and their midfield, like, it doesn't really scare me that much. Brad Crouch, he's just an okay footballer. I think Steele's an okay footballer. I think we've still got enough quality to match them, and I think we've still got enough up forward to kick a good winning score. So, look, I honestly think we should win the game, really.
Yeah, and you look at Carlton as well at the moment. It feels, and I'm not meaning to disrespect St Kilda because I can already sense it. They've come over for this one again, and they're already, the fingers are typing it so fast on their keyboards, ready to have a go at the both of us. But when you're looking at St Kilda at the moment, like, I'm similar to you. I'm not necessarily worried about what they're bringing. I'm more worried about, like, what Carlton are we getting? And I have enough belief now that I feel confident that we're going to bring the same that we've seen for the last 6 weeks. We've done it over enough time that you're confident that that's going to happen. But I'd be more worried that we don't turn up and that maybe that Collingwood game had taken a little bit out of us, and that was just the emotion of it. Maybe, you get a couple more injuries, you lose a Chera, you lose a McGovern, that starts to fall off for a week, and then you go again. That's where my concern probably is a little bit more. But if I'm going to give the Saints some credit, which I've got to do for a little bit of this to make it a bit of a challenge, they're in the top 8 for a reason, and Ross Lyon is a good coach. He always seems to find little ways to nullify the teams that he's come up against, and I'm interested to see what he's going to do and what the plan is to try and stop a Charlie, knowing that one of our issues right now is we really only have the one key forward, and everyone else has kind of stepped up around that now, Smalls, to add to the goal tally and create space. But he's a good coach, and he's going to maybe find ways to make it difficult for them. And then on the other end, I think that their Smalls can hurt us, and it has been something that's challenged us in the past and even earlier this season. You look at Higgins has kicked 31, Butler 28, and Owens 23. All 3 of those guys on their day, and they've shown from their goal tallies this season, pretty consistent. They'll score a couple every single week, so you just can't let the ball hit the ground in that sort of defensive 50 and let them pounce on it all day and give them the space. Like you were saying with the hard running across the field, you give them the space, those Smalls are going to eat it up every single day. So those are kind of the things that I'm definitely wary of from the Saints' point of view. But again, I'm just so confident with how we're playing right now that it's hard to look at literally anyone you could say that we're playing this week. It could be Melbourne next week, and I'm still sitting here ridiculously confident that Carlton are going to get the job done.
Yeah, I think when you do it against the top 2 teams, it does give you confidence. And if we as fans are confident, I can imagine the boys have got, a fair bit of self-belief at the moment. And so they should. And I think that's the sort of thing they need to hopefully continue on for the rest of the year. So it's just another thing I thought of too. I don't want to see us, as we only have Charlie at the moment, I don't want to see us kicking the ball up high for Cal Wilkie to just eat up, because I think even in that first quarter last week against the Pies, we were doing it a little bit to more, but we sort of changed the way we went about it, which is really good that we did that in game, because you only got to think back to the early part of the year. We were kicking it to the intercept defender every week. So I think if we can avoid that, lower the eyes like we have been, we should hopefully be able to eliminate Wilkie from the game, because he is a big part of why they are a good team. when they're playing
Yeah,
well.
he's having a ridiculously good season. He's currently, I think he's ranked number 2 for marks this season. I think he's actually just 1 mark behind Ryan from Freo. So he's definitely a big thing that we need to watch out for. And I was hoping that maybe they wouldn't have all their key defenders out there. So he'd have to maybe lock down a bit more on a Kerno, but it looks like they've got enough height down there that maybe he can float a little bit more. So I agree with you. I think he's one definitely from their defensive point of view that we just can't be allowing to kick to and letting him free roam and intercept. But again, there's that confidence from last week with what we're able to do with eliminate Darcy Moore from that contest. And yeah, it's going to be a big game because both teams are really fighting for finals. Like we touched on it earlier that we've got to win 2 out of our next 4 to guarantee it. And Saints are in kind of a similar boat. They've obviously they're a little bit higher on the table than us, but they've got a really tough run of fixtures coming up. And this is one that I reckon that their fans would be looking at saying, they win this game, they've pretty much sewn up finals. And that's kind of where I'm thinking of it from a Carlton point of view, that we win this, the confidence is definitely there, that if it's 1 from 3, then you're not going to be stressing as much than if it's, we've got to win 2 from 3, and then all the memories from last year maybe start to stem back. So you're worried at all that because St Kilda are also still really playing for their season, you're worried at all in that component from what they're going to bring from maybe an energy level. And on top of that, the way the media has kind of built them up as the underdogs, and that I think every single thing I've seen on socials this week from anyone in the media has been Saints are the ones that are not making finals. So you're worried about the ammunition that's gone St Kilda's way this week?
Slightly, yeah, because I think that they love that underdog tag, and they always have. I mean, one premiership in over 100 years will give you that underdog tag, so they love it. They thrive off it, so it is slightly concerning. But I think the thing and like we've repeatedly said, that's filling me with confidence. It's not like we're dreaming up this scenario of how we're going to win, and we haven't seen it. We've seen how we know we'll win for the last month or so. So I'm pretty confident, honestly. Like I would be surprised if St Kilda come out and don't throw a fair bit at us. Like, as much as I've spoken crap about them and I don't really rate them that highly, they are good at defense. They're a good defensive team. They're a good hard running team, and they're not easy to play against. Most teams they play against struggle to score. So I'm not expecting us to come out and do what we did to West Coast and have 9 goals in the first quarter. I think it's going to be ugly. I don't think it's going to be a win that we're going to be putting on replay on Wednesday night after Sunday. So I think I'm just hoping we can take that 4 points and walk away, because like you said, I think if we can get a win here, when I think our backs are actually up against the wall with our injury list, it's just got to be huge belief, because look, I've got a sneaky feeling like Mackay might not be too far away. I'm thinking, Walsh, if we can get him back next week for the Melbourne game, I think if we can sneak across the line here, we could cement finals next week, and that would just be huge to have the last 2 weeks to maybe, just rest a couple of players if we can. So we got to sew it up ASAP, because I don't want to be sitting there round 24 just stressing, not knowing
again.
Are we going to play. I honestly can't do it. I couldn't do it again. It would break me.
Yeah, and GWS are playing some ridiculous footy at the moment, so it's not a team you necessarily want to play in the last round as well. Also playing for finals, and it's weird. I've got this feeling, and again, it means nothing, but it's that we're winning this game, we'll beat Melbourne, and then because we've cemented finals and we've almost willed ourselves over this ridiculous second half of the season, winning every single game in a row, that we'll then drop that Gold Coast game away. It'll be one we've travelled, one that the boys are just so emotionally, physically drained that they lose that, and then it's a free hit the last round, bit of confidence up. They try maybe a few things tactically, get the win, and go into finals that way. It feels like this is just something that's just going to happen. Like, we're just going to keep going until we make it. The way that they're playing at the moment, you feel that determination of even them, take the fans away from this. They don't want to be in that scenario of having to win again the last week of the season. They want to get it done early. And just the last couple of things that I've kind of written down for the Saints that I thought was interesting when I was getting a couple of these stats was looking that they were the number one. They're the number one team currently ranked for disposals, which surprised me a little bit. And they're also number 1 for kicks. Makes sense having that much of the ball, but a bit more kicks than the handballs in that instance. And they're number 2 from marks as well. So very heavy possession base. It's clear they win a lot of the ball and they sort of build that possession from the back. They like to have it. They like play a bit more of that slow brand defensive footy like you've touched on. And you look at Cal Wilkie as well with the number 2 for marks. I've got that defensive aspect of it, but where it kind of looks interesting from that and having so much of the possession, number 1 disposals, but they're 15th for inside 50s, which is very interesting to show that even though they have a lot of that football, they don't seem to be getting it in enough to really be damaging the opposition, and probably goes from that slow brand of footy. And then, they're 2nd for marks overall, but they're 12th for marks inside 50. So this is, again, that similar aspect of they're just not using that ball and getting it in deep into their forward line for the amount of possession that they're having. And I know that's kind of their game style, but it just doesn't make me fear them as much when you see, even if they have a lot of the ball, they don't seem to be doing a ridiculous amount of damage with it. And then delving deeper into the contest, where that's an area that we've been ridiculously good at. Our stoppage scoring differential from rounds 14 to 20, we're number 1 not only for the comp, but apparently at plus 235 is the best that's ever been recorded. Wow. So at the moment, we're absolutely flying. It's better than Hawthorn and their pomp. So right now, this run of form is really good, and what we're doing from the stoppage craft is great. And you look at St Kilda at the moment, they rank 13th for contested possessions. We're 8th, and 9th for uncontested. We're 5th. So currently, even with as bad as we've played this season, we've turned that around and got those into some positives. So for me, I'm kind of looking at this game going, we win it in the contest. We play to our strengths that way. You saw it against Collingwood last week. That, for me, I'm earmarking as the key to winning this game, is that contested brand of football. Get that done, and we'll have the ball going more our way. What do you kind of make of that contested side, and looking at some of those stats that I've just randomly reeled off for you?
Well, that differential, that's huge. Like that's a lot. Like I'm surprised. I know we've been dominant, but that's surprising. But the whole Saints being, up there with the marks and disposals, I think those stats, and I think we've seen firsthand earlier in the year, we had some of our players, even the game, I think, against St Kilda, we had 3 or 4 guys 30 plus disposals, and we were no good that game. And I think just because you're getting a lot of the ball doesn't really mean you're damaging it. And like you've said, their inside 50 isn't much. Their marks inside 50 isn't much. So I sort of agree with you there. It's not much to fear in that sense. And I do definitely agree with you that it starts in the middle. Like if we can have Cripper getting the ball first touch out, getting it inside 50, that's going to bring our smalls into play as well, because the ball coming inside 50, it gives less time for guys like Wilkie to set up. So I think we can just play that fast, direct football. That's definitely where we can win, and that definitely starts at the contest. So I definitely agree with what you've said there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It really does paint the picture of what we were at early in the season. I remember even looking at it now. We were like number 1 for disposals and number 1 for marks. But we were just doing nothing with it, just chip kicks, in defensive 50, and then we're struggling to move the ball forward. And I think that they're definitely a bit better structured in the way that they then attempt to move the ball than we were, obviously, throughout that period. But it just kind of shows you the contrasting game plan that they have that, and we're still beating them in uncontested possessions, which you'd think if they have so much of the ball and are using that defensive build kind of football, that they'd have more of that ball on the outside. And it kind of makes me excited that feels like we've turned this around. It feels like our strengths beat St Kilda's strengths. It'll be interesting to see. And just before we get into the team changes, because that's the fun part. That is the best part of this build-up show, discussing what has happened. And there's been a lot that has happened tonight regarding the team changes for us and for the Saints. I've got to give a shout out here to Lockie Fogarty. He plays his 50th game for us here. And I just got to ask the question, because he isn't someone that's featured a lot, not someone that gets spoken about a lot for Carlton, particularly over his journey since coming across from Geelong. And what have you kind of made of his impact, particularly coming into this side when we've shifted this form later in this season?
Huge. I'll put out on Twitter my team sort of weekly, and I think I was sort of wanting him in there sort of in the middle of that bad run. I know he's had injuries and that, but I think the impact that he's made, like he's just someone that doesn't need to have 20 disposals, but he impacts and he tackles. Like his tackles, he'd be in the top 3-4 tacklers every week for us. Like it's just, and I think it's also got a lot to do with I feel like the players altogether have a lot more role clarity. So I think he knows that if he comes in, lays his tackles, he's staying in the team because that's all he really needs to do. So give me another 5 or 6 Lockie Fogarty's, just role players, just want to do their bit. Like they don't really care if they get a lick of the ice cream. They want to do what they can for the team to get the win. And I'm loving what he's doing. Like if he keeps playing this way, bring on another 200 Lockie Fogarty games. Love that.
It's insane, the turnaround. And I don't know how much I can add on to that. I think you've absolutely nailed Lockie Fogarty because he came in originally and all of a sudden he was still known for the tackles and we're going, oh, we've unearthed one. And then all of a sudden just dropped away, wasn't playing good footy. And even, early this year when you were calling for him to come in, I know on the selection table, a couple were saying, do we just bring him in and do something different? We know we can at least tackle. And I don't think anyone even expected him to have the impact that he has so far. And nailed down as that pressure small forward makes so much happen for us. And then his ability to also push up towards that contest and be a body, be another person that can win the ball himself. He's been an exciting player and it's weird. I think you go back when this podcast probably started, I wouldn't have got too excited about maybe a Lockie Fogarty type, but I think maturing myself as a fan and I think us as Carlton supporters, now that we're away from that just superstar player and wanting a team full of those, having these role players, they're the ones that I'm excited about now and what they're able to do. Just, what you're getting week in, week out. And it's this selfless team that we are now. Lockie Fogarty's like one of the poster boys for that kind of role. It's big credit to him for the 50 games.
Yeah,
but now
sorry, he could have easily just given up too. Like he's been out of the team for a long time, so he's done a really good job to get back in and impact the way he has.
100%. So let's look at the team changes. You look at St Kilda themselves, as we touched on, ridiculous. Of course, they bring back Hill, King, and Membry this week. And I'm hoping, like you mentioned, maybe that brought them back a little too early. They know their season's on the line. They need to beat Carlton, that maybe these guys are a little bit underdone. Looking at our team changes, though, because this is more of the fun thing, what were the changes that you would have done? Because at the moment, we don't know the exact 100% teams. We're recording this on the Thursday night. Currently out is Chera and McGovern due to the injury in the extended bench. And all the ins is Dow, Binns, Cottrell, Ed, Sam Durden, Fisher, Honey, Motlop. But what would have been the changes that you would have made if you were in charge?
Well, prior to McGovern, the late hamstring injury, it was pretty simple. It was just Dow for Chera. And the sub, I was even thinking potentially like a Zach Fisher. I just thought, he's been out of the team for quite a while. We've seen Motts go out of the team and come back in and sort of change his role. To be fair, Fish was dropped when we were in that sort of bad form, and I don't think life as a small forward would have been very easy back in that sort of form slump. But now obviously Gov goes out. I don't think we need to replace him with a tool. I know that they've got a few tools in, especially with Hayes coming back in and Membry and King. But I think with, Kemp, Weeders, we can sort of, and Marchie back there now too, we can sort of handle it. The only thing, I just don't know whether Kemp has enough sort of strength to handle one of their bigs. That's the only thing I'm concerned about, if he gets sort of isolated on a Membry in the square or whatever. So, but look, I'm willing to back what we've got there. So I'm probably going to say Dow for Chera, which has already been confirmed by Vossi. And I think I would just bring Zach Fisher in and with McGovern out, just to have an extra mid around the ball. Look, I hope they don't just put Ed Curnow in. I really don't want to see that.
That's going to be the interesting one. It feels like every time there's been a chance to, they've brought him in every single time this season.
I love it. And it's frustrating the way this year's panned out, because I feel like people are just sort of sick of it, but it's not his fault. Like the selectors are the ones picking him. So, but I feel like we know what Ed is, and I feel like we could potentially get something out of Fisher that Ed wouldn't be able to provide. So I think, let's adopt that small mentality, I guess. Let's try and run them off their feet. So, so pretty much I'm going to see Dow in for Chera and just Fish in for McGovern. And then the sub, Ed Curnow, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ed Curnow.
There's not many left, is there?
No, there's not. We're running out of names. So that's probably what I'm looking for this week.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very similar. I agree. I was pretty much just Dow in, Chera out with the injury, and then Fisher as sub. I floated on the selection table on Pobby and Oz on last night that a Cottrell out for Fisher, but it was more just for a bit of fun because I thought it'd be a bit too boring if I just went in with one change for the week. What are we going to talk about for a full show if we do that? But Fisher would have been my sub for those reasons that you bring up where, yeah, look, if we're going to be honest, he hasn't played good footy this season, but we also weren't playing good footy as well. And there's a part of me that just thinks if we're going in with the mentality that we're good enough regardless who's out there and we're going to make finals, I would like to see what a Fisher would be like in a team that's now functioning well, because he's a little bit downhill skier in a way that when we seem to be playing well, he plays really well. But last year I did think he was a bit of a barometer that when he was playing well, we were playing well. And it's incredible. He was so pivotal to a few of our big moments last season when we were good. So I'm just interested to see what a player like him would do in this team and coming off, I think it was a 30 possession game in the twos as well. Showed he was doing a little bit around the ball. And when you lose a guy like Chera, we don't have a Walsh, and then Dow's the replacement, probably still lack a bit of leg speed. So I don't mind the idea of Fisher coming on in that second half. And whether he is playing forward or whether you pinch hit him in the midfield, at least he adds a bit of leg speed around that to burst away that maybe we are losing with a few of the other players that we do have. And then you've got the McGovern out now. I'm similar to you. It feels like with the changes that we've made that Sam Durden's going to come straight in for him, which shocked me. I thought we would have gone smaller. I would have just maybe gone Cowan for it and gone, okay, Marchbank becomes the more lockdown. Kemp continues doing what he's doing. And Cowan's got the height as well, so he can also intercept a little bit, obviously a bit younger, not expecting him to play the most amazing football out there, but I just like the idea of adding the smalls to it, keeping the run and movement off half back, because that's what you're losing with Gov as well, not just the defensive side, but his quick rebound. So I thought maybe a Cowan, that kind of player, bring him in to replace that and just shift the other magnets around. But I guess with the changes that we have made, with the extended bench basically here being Dow, Binns, Cottrell, Ed, Durden, Fisher, Honey, Motlop. What four are you saving? And then who's your sub out of those based off the actual changes?
Yeah, so Mott's is going to get a game. Dow as well. Sorry, I just need to bring it up. I've forgotten.
No, do not stress at all. I sort of threw all the names at you then, so it is a bit difficult to go through it. And while I'm here as well, because this is a great pause, because Lockie will be, if he's listening to this, he'll be throwing his phone off into some river, lovely, in the beach in Europe, actually. He's loving the sun. Going, I haven't done any plugs this episode, so while you're listening to this, if you're watching on YouTube, let us know what you think of the team changes in the comments below. Or if you're listening in podcast form, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner and let us know. Slide in the DMs, tweet at us, Exodus. I don't know what it is anymore. It's all moving too fast with Elon. He's probably going to change it next week as well. But yeah, get into contact with us and let us know your thoughts. How are we beating the Sainers? What do you want to see from this game? Leave it all in the comments and head over to at Navy Blue Corner and let me know your thoughts. But Cammy, what are the four bench spots? Who's staying?
So it's Dow, Cottrell, and Motlop, and then it's Fisher. So those are my four. And then I guess the sub will be either Curnow, Durden, Binns, or Honey. I don't ever want to see Honey step foot on a field for Carlton again.
I don't blame you.
I don't think they're going to play. I just get a feeling Binns probably won't play this year, unless we lose Akers and Hollands in the same week. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
but, I think looking at that, I'd say Curnow is probably going to be the sub, And I know what you're saying with how Durden's been put on the extended bench. He's just sort of assumed that he's going to come straight in. But I've just got a feeling that they're just going to back what we've got back there. But, I could be wrong. And he potentially plays instead of Fisher. So,
yeah, it's interesting because before Marchbank was there, it was Boyd, and then that turned into Cowan, and now that's turned into Marchbank. So they've slowly gotten taller as we went through, but originally we were playing a lot smaller. So it gives credence to, do we just keep Marchbank, make him be that more key defender and just move the other magnets around? That's what we were doing, and it was working then. I feel like I maybe don't trust Marchbank as much to lock down at the moment. So maybe you do throw a Durden in there. Part of me also does kind of just want to see what Durden is like again. We didn't get a lot of him last year. I think he played the one game, got injured in that run where no matter who we were plugging in to fill that hole, it was like they're injured in that game immediately. What's worse, the injuries we had last year or the injuries we had this year, if you were to pick which is worse?
I didn't really care 6 weeks ago because I was like, whatever, season done. But it's all just sort of come to a head in the last 2-3 weeks, and I'm more annoyed about it now because I feel like we're copping those injuries mid-year, and I was like, oh, it's all right, we've got the 8 wins on the board, but we need the boys out, we needed these guys out there, and they're not. But it is frustrating. I did have a question for you. What does this say about Lewis Young, the fact that he's not on the extended bench and Sam Durden is getting named?
How about that? It is. I didn't think this shows maybe something deeper that I didn't even think about it when I first saw the teams named. I was like, oh yeah, he's the next key defender in. Didn't think about it, went about my day, continued, writing up the run sheet. And then all of a sudden went back on Twitter and someone went, as if Lewis Young didn't get in. I was like, oh shit, I forgot he existed, to be honest. And it is interesting because there were those little murmurs that came out through our bad patch of form that maybe him and a Wiedering don't get along very well. And next week he was dropped and we haven't really seen him again, apart from when he was just in there as a ruck, because we literally needed someone that was over 180 centimeters that could actually play ruck. So he jumped in and it feels as if they just don't rate him now for whatever reason, whether it is just him. If we want to go on the negative sides of a Lewis Young, he's just so slow to make a decision, very slow to move the ball forward. And maybe with what Durden's been doing in the twos, they've been seeing a bit more urgency and seeing the positive sides to it. But it definitely doesn't bode well for a Lewis Young at the moment. We signed him to, I think, a 3-year deal or something at the end of last year. That's maybe not looking like the best bit of business. I know it wouldn't be on a lot of money anyway, but very interesting that he hasn't got a look in at all this season since we've changed things around. And then even with a couple of injuries, he's still not getting a look in defense. What do you kind of make of it yourself?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he was recruited to the club as backup, really. We never thought that he was going to be a star, really. I think last year, he performed pretty well, so we had pretty high expectations going into the season. But he just looks a completely different player. I remember when he came on the other week when Sauce went off, I just remember seeing him forward and I was just like, can you just go sit behind the post and get out of the way? He just was not doing anything that was valuable. So it's just, but I really loved him last year and he was huge whilst Weeders was out for those 6 weeks or whatever. So he's definitely gone backwards a lot, but I mean, he's still young, time to turn it around. But I think for this year, I don't see him getting back in the team.
It's so strange. I've got a mate that's a massive Doggies fan, and I'll be honest, when we got him, I did not know who Lewis Young was. I was like, I've seen this guy play a couple of games recently. He's been playing a bit of ruck. I was like, I don't know what he is. Asked him what he thought, and he was pretty happy to get rid of Lewis Young. Didn't rate him, just for all the reasons we're kind of seeing this season. That's what he was saying. He was like, he's a little bit slow to make that decision. Doesn't really offer a lot. Looks a bit lost. And it's so strange because last season, unbelievable, like you say. He was intercepting everything. He was so strong. He was winning the one-on-ones. Thought we'd got an absolute bargain. We'd replaced Liam Jones beautifully. And it's bizarre, the just absolute turnaround in the worst way, the decline of Lewis Young so far. There's obviously still time he can turn it around. We've seen some good signs. But, yeah, let me know if you're listening to this, what you think of Lewis Young and what do we do with him? Because he's definitely not a ruckman, definitely not a forward, like you said. It didn't look good when he was down there. Can he turn it around back as a defender? Not too sure. But yeah, let us know as well who makes the bench out of the listed names. Or react if you're listening to this once the actual teams have been announced. React to it and let us know. I'll be jumping in the comments, giving my thoughts on all the changes on YouTube, and you'll definitely hear from me on socials. But let's move to the listener questions because we've got a fair few to get through. A lot on the injuries, a lot on the rest of the season, so it's a perfect time to chat about it. And we've got the first one in from the great Timmy Dub, who says, injury toll is rising again. I'm absolutely certain we now have a system that makes us one of the strongest teams in the AFL. But at what point does the lack of personnel due to injury override the effectiveness of any system? Have we reached that point with McGovern and Chera out? What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like this is too many injuries now?
It's getting close.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say the names that I would say that if they're out, then we're done. But I think you can know that there's probably three of them and they go down the spine of our team. If we were to lose any of those three in the next 4 weeks, you pretty much just pack it up. We won't play the last 3 or 4 weeks. So it's getting really bloody close. Like we need to have this week, we need to get out completely injury free. So
yeah.
But I do agree. And like we've said, our system is really good at the moment. So fingers crossed, it's not going to affect us too much, but it is getting very close to being sort of past the point of, return.
Yeah, it's really those like key players that you're definitely not mentioning by name, and I'm not going to mention by name, not going to put that into the universe at all, because you look at currently the injuries that we do have, it seems like we've kind of got enough to deal with it. Like a Dow can come in, Hewitt obviously came in for Kennedy, and there's a few other magnets you can still kind of move around with Doherty going to the midfield, and then even with, McGovern's injury, you can throw a Durden in there if you need the height, or even, I guess, a Lewis Young to an extent. There's still guys that are absolutely fine that you can plug and play, or, we've still got those other defenders like a Cowan that are there. Boyd in a couple of weeks will come back. It's still names that can plug into those positions, but it's if we lose another, then you start to have that issue. So I don't think this is the point. I think I agree with you. If there's one more, then you're in trouble, because if you lose that, another forward, there's no height. And so I think we're just praying now that, a Jack Silvani whose knee they still don't really have a timeline for. You hope he's back pretty soon. You're hoping that Walshy, who even said last week after the game that he was starting to have a couple of running sessions. So that sounds pretty positive on the Sam Walsh front. So you're hoping we get at least a couple of these guys back in the next few weeks, just get enough wins to make finals. And then what's the scariest proposition for any other club in the AFL? Coming in first final, you play Carlton, and all of a sudden every single player is fully fit and they're ready to go. Gov's back, Walsh, Kennedy, potentially, I doubt it, but you got the rest. You got Harry coming back. It's just, it's worrying if you're an opposition team.
Well, and you just got to think now back to 2016, the pre-finals bye came in for the first time ever. Bulldogs just limped into the finals. The bye saved them, got all their players back. They won a flag. So who knows? We just got to. The good thing is they're coming back. Like we're pretty certain that all of them, except for, like you said, Kennedy, they'll be. If we play finals, they'll be playing in that first week. So we just got to hold tight for these next 4 weeks and get a couple of wins, pretty much.
100%. Now I've got one from our big man who is always delivering some breaking stories. Hasn't had a couple recently. He was on it with the Nick Newman stuff. So very excited to hear what Soj is up to and if he's got any other big scoops for us coming up. But he asks, am I alone in thinking we can't go into this game full of assumptions that we will just win? Yes, we're on a winning streak, and at some point, losing Soldiers takes its toll, plus also complacency after a big win. What are your thoughts on the mentality going into this game?
Yeah, no, he's 100% right. Like we can't go into it just expecting we're going to win. But I think that's the sort of mindset we would have seen from the group 2 months ago. Like I am so confident in the inroads we've made in the mental space in the last 6 weeks. Like I remember going into last week's game. That's a game that I think typically would have overawed them. You just got to look back to the last 4 weeks of last year. Like we shut the bed against Melbourne. We lost to Adelaide when we shouldn't have, and we choked against the Pies. But Collingwood came at us pretty hard Friday night. We stood tough. We won the game. They're more mentally resilient than they were this time last year, this time 6 weeks ago. So I think that's one thing that I can take out of these last 6 weeks is that the mental fortitude that this group has now is good. They're maturing, they're realizing what it takes. So I'm confident they're going to go into it the way they should, and that's ready for the Saints to come at them pretty hard.
Yeah, it feels like there's that maturity that has grown. And if anyone knows not to be complacent and that every single game matters late in the season, it's us. You'd think they would have learnt from last year, and they know that. And then I think the Collingwood game has really arrived at such a good time where we have that, we get the win, we're able to exercise those demons, push that away, know that we've overcome the ones that ruined our season last year. If they don't have that belief now that if we just bring every single thing to these games, we can do it. So I think the belief's there. And yeah, it feels as if they're not that complacent team, because if anyone knows it, it's them right now. So I understand the injuries and all that. And maybe the fan sentiment has been the ones saying, yeah, we're just going to go into this game and win it. I feel like we've been the ones that have maybe got a bit cocky after this stretch of form, but it feels like everything that he's built on is work rate, pressure, tackling. None of that is complacency. The boys know they have to get it done. And maybe losing a couple of players like a Chera and a McGovern as well, maybe that helps just make them understand that, yeah, you've just beaten Collingwood, but look what happens. You lose a couple of players, you need to still be switched on. So maybe that might help us weirdly if you look at it from the other lens. But really good question. We got one again from very hoodish, another great listener of the pod, who says, are we bringing in the Fish to play a role in the midfield? Dow is a lock this week, but I'd like to see Fish too. He can be class, always better when the team is confident. Touched on it a little bit. What would you do if Fisher came into this team, whether he is in there to start or whether he's the sub? Where would you like to play Fish, and what kind of impact do you think he can have in a team that's playing some good footy for once?
I think the midfield rotation. I think we've seen Zach Fisher the forward, and I haven't exactly loved it. I don't think he fits the mould of our forwards at the moment, as in he's never been a big tackler, and his forward pressure's probably never been that high. I think, put him in the midfield rotation, get him actually delivering the ball inside 50, because he's a decent ball user, and when he can get it on the outside, he's not a bad kick. So I think if he's going to be in the team, that's what he's in for. That's he's gone back to the VFL playing as a midfielder, so it only makes sense that he sort of becomes a part of that midfield rotation. So I think that's where I'd probably like to see him if he does play.
Yeah, and I'm praying as well, if Fish does play or get an opportunity for the rest of this season at some stage, that because he's been dropped and he's someone pretty much since he got drafted has been, you're in this team, you're in the 22 every single week. Even when we haven't been good, even when there was still a lot of question marks over him and what he was going to become as a player, really he was just there because he was a decent ball user, he was quick, we didn't have a lot of those players. And even then reinvented himself as a bit of a small forward. He was just kind of always knew he would play in this team. And it was really the first time he got dropped and has been out for an extended period. I wonder if that changes his mentality at all now that he knows, look, I could be gone at the end of the season. There's murmurs that, we might end up looking to trade him off to West Coast or a team over in WA, whether it's them or Freo at this stage. Is he fighting for his Carlton career? Probably at this stage. So does that change him at all? Does he have a mentality shift of, okay, all these guys are ahead of me because they're bringing the tackle pressure, because they're hunting. Maybe it's about time I bring that and have that as an element of my game. So I'm just kind of excited to see him come in just so we know what Fisher is. And I agree with you. I think as a midfielder, I'd like to see him there a little bit more. As I touched on earlier, losing the class of a Walsh and Chera, I think he can add a bit there, but just adds to the rotations of that forward line as well, knowing that Cunningham can go through the middle, Fogarty can do it. Just adds to the rotations, which I always do like. But it'll be interesting to see what Fish brings.
And you'd hope it goes the way that he sees as an opportunity to, get back in his team, because, these guys have been around for quite a while, and this is only the second season in their careers in the AFL that Carlton are a chance to play finals. So I know for myself, if I was a part of that group that was just outside of the team, you'd want to be working as hard as you can to get in. And when you get your opportunity, like sort of Dow has got another week to play a full game, and Fisher potentially to get a game, like you're going to want to put your best foot forward. You know, maybe attitude's been an issue in the past because, like you said, he's gotten the game way too easily. He's come into the team and maybe he hasn't done those selfless team things. Who knows? We could get a 6-7 tackle Zach Fisher game this weekend if he plays. But, you know, he deserves another chance, I think. And I really hope that he takes it as an opportunity.
And it's interesting as well. I was very fortunate that Lockie loves every time I bloody bring this up because my head gets bigger. But I was at one of the player sponsored dinners with Zach Fisher because the lovely WA Blues sponsor him. And the one thing that I do remember him talking about, because we weren't playing good football at this stage, he had just been dropped, and we're kind of talking a bit about, you know, he's still friends with some of the players that are left, and it ended up kind of getting a bit off-season chat at the table. And there was one thing he mentioned saying like, and he kind of brought this up himself. No one was saying sack coaches or anything crazy like that, but he was sort of saying like, yeah, I don't want any more coaches. I'm sick of the changes. Like we've already had so many here. Like having to have to change everything gets so annoying. And Pieto was talking about how many list changes you have every season, and the group gets so close by the end of the year, and then you lose, 4 or 5 minimum every season, and you're going to lose a couple of your mates every single time. And I wonder if there's that still element of Fisher where he doesn't want to go. He's been with his club his whole AFL life. He doesn't want the change. He wants to fight for it. And if he is selected, I hope we see that he is fighting for it. And the last question here to wrap things up is from Dom in the Den, who says, we should maul St Kilda. Do you think the belief has finally set in? Are we Neo, and do we finally believe? So as we've said that we still believe, are you confident that the players have finally bought in and believe that doesn't matter what's happening, we're beating the Saints this week?
Yeah, 100%. I think, like, I've heard murmurs even 4 weeks ago that they knew that they were good enough to beat most teams. So I think if you can't beat the best team in the comp, supposedly Collingwood, on a Friday night, their home game in front of their big feral crowd, comprehensively win, like we probably should have won by 6 goals. If you can't get belief out of that, you're never going to have belief. So their belief should be sky high regardless of who's out there. And, the outs aren't great, but you got to look at the team sheet. You've still got Cripps, you've still got Leaders, you've still got Charlie, you've still got Hewitt, Akers. We've still got some really good players out there, so they should stand tall. They'll believe in themselves. I'm very confident that they will. Yeah,
and even just the last thing I want to touch on, because you nailed all that. I'm not adding any more to that, but even just talking about, say, the McGovern out and Marchbank replacing, I think he had something like 7 or 8 marks last week, something ridiculous, which just shows you that this plug and play, we've still got talented players that are coming in that we're not seeing as necessarily superstars at the moment. And everyone is playing their role. The belief's there. It's a very, very exciting time. And yeah, let's get the job done. Let's get the first of the 2 wins that we need to finish this season, to make finals, get it done and dusted early so we don't have to worry about it. The pressure's off. I know it's going to be a massive, massive game. But yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this episode. Thanks so much for joining me, Cam. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can the people find you, and what are you up to for the rest of the season?
You can find me on Twitter. My name's Cam. Remove the last name just in case. I do push a few buttons. You never know when someone's going to try and get you fired from your job. So rest of the season, I'll be dropping in and out of the footy. I think I'll be going to the Melbourne game. Don't know if I can get to the Giants one. So I'll be there for finals though, 100%. So that'll be me for the rest of the year. And I hope we've still got another 5 or 6 games in us. That's what I want. But thanks for having me, Ian. It's a pleasure. So go Blues.
No, absolutely loved it. And yes, links to Cammy's socials will be in the show notes, be in the description. So go over there. If you love a good hot take and you love just a bit of banter, he's the man for it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks again for joining me, because Lockie's not here. He's ditched me. He's telling me he's listening every week. So hopefully he's here, because I'm giving him a little bit right at the end. But no, it's been an absolute blast. I'm keen. I've got to have you on another time throughout this episode. And when Lockie's back, we'll be sure to get you on. But we'll be back early next week talking about a massive, massive win against the Sainers because the Blues are playing finals this season. Lock it in. Thanks again, Cam. That's finishing it. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.